It's been a very sad weekend, to say the least. So a lot of Filipino fans are still in absolute shock, and it's no surprise considering that with the recent events, especially in the basketball landscape, it's been pretty hard to digest, to say the least. In a tournament where we're looked at as Team USA, or basically the gods in this particular sport, Gilas Pilipinas finally dethroned by Indonesia to the score of 85 to 81. Now, people over the weekend have been trying to nitpick at this and that and trying to find reason to make sense of what in the world just happened. We rule the SEAG games. We never lose. We ride a winning streak that dates all the way back to 1989. In fact, we have been on a 52-game winning streak till then, till that loss to Indonesia. So where did it all go wrong? Let's break it down. So the first thing I want people to look at is the game itself. Once you start watching the game and once you start picking apart all the different things that were happening, there's one thing that stands out. It's really the three-point shooting of Indonesia versus the three-point shooting of Gilas Pilipinas. In that game alone, Indonesia put up 13 shots that went in versus 31 attempts. Gilas Pilipinas only shot 3 for 16 from that same area. The problem there is Gilas Pilipinas probably, in my mind, was too preoccupied with the new naturalized players that Indonesia was fielding, and they absolutely forgot that these other players for Indonesia were dead eye and hot from the three-point line. 13 three-pointers spelled the ultimate demise. They were not defending them at all. They were not running these players off the three-point line, forcing them to put the ball on the floor for maybe a short stab, or getting them uncomfortable by going down the lane and possibly getting some type of wall built up with Junmar Fajardo, with Isaac Go, with all these other players that we have that are super talented. In the end, 13 to 31 versus 3 for 16, that's not a good sign. Let's talk about the second biggest elephant in the room. Granted that we already have a pretty good idea what the biggest elephant in the room may be, this doesn't get talked about too often. It's actually the player depth. When you talk about Indonesia in that game, they actually managed to rotate at least 10 players. Gilas managed to only rotate 8, which gives you a clear idea that Chot Reyes was not confident with the roster that he was actually working with. Granted, he had players that could, in his dribble drive offense, space the floor a little bit for his playmakers. He didn't do that. He also had athletic players who could have changed the game in one way or another. A good dunk here and there, a great defensive play here and there. He did not do that. Rather, he stuck it out with this 8-man group where against Indonesia, they looked tired towards the end. And in his dribble drive offense system, which we'll talk about in a bit, it definitely showed that it was no longer working. You don't have the shooters to make this system work. And on top of that, which more or less compounded to the problem, you didn't have the right playmakers to make that system work. Top of that, the personnel just didn't make sense. Now finally, let's get to the actual elephant in the room. I mean, the dribble drive offense for the longest time, we know this very, very well. It hasn't necessarily worked. It only works because you got guys like Jason Castro, who's a great dribble drive guy. He's great at penetrating in the lane, causing havoc, kicking it out to guys like Donovan Ontiveros, Jeff Chan, you name it. The guys who made it work for us, they're not in this edition. They were never there. But the problem you also have is the world has adapted. They've changed so much in terms of systems offensively and defensively. Gilas Pilipinas in this tournament, you can tell from the way they were playing games, they were sort of lagging behind a lot. And the offense looked a little bit, dare I say, they looked a little bit lost. And in a game where they were able to wall up, talking about Indonesia, they were able to clog the lanes, they knew what they wanted to do defensively, it showed. The only shooter on that team is Matthew Wright. You have 2 playmakers in Kiefer and 30, and you have 1 legit post scorer in Junmar Fajardo. But let's be honest, Junmar Fajardo's game does not necessarily translate to the international stage. He got 20 points, but how good or how dominant were those 20 points? It was not that great. Completely unacceptable. I understand that a lot of fans out there, they're saying that we could have won even with a bunch of amateur players if Tab Ball was coaching. I kind of agree, because the system offense works. What he does, it's like proof in the pudding. With Ateneo, they've been dominant for so long. Even Jordan Brand said, "Hey, come on, let's sponsor these guys. They're pretty good. They're good at what they do. We're gonna get a great return on investment." With Gilas, it's outdated what they're doing. We have so much talent in the Philippines, an immense amount of talent basketball-wise. Filipinos who are great. Guards, forwards, centers, you name it. We have the talent. It's just that this system that we've been riding on for the past, 6, 7 years, it just doesn't work anymore. It hasn't worked for the longest time. And it finally showed its cracks, and it absolutely got obliterated by Indonesia. A country that hasn't won a gold medal ever in the SEAG Games. They never qualified for the FIBA Worlds, for the Olympics. Nada, zilch. Absolutely nothing has come out of that country until a couple of days ago. They win a gold medal in the sport that we're supposed to be dominating in that region. It absolutely sucks. But it is what it is. So, a couple of key takeaways from this is that it's not really the end of the road. Right? It's not the apocalypse for the basketball world of the Philippines. One loss, according to Raiko Torman, who was the coach, by the way, on the other side, said, simply put, one loss does not define a program. Of course not. But of course, this one hurts, and hurts in a really big way. What can you do? Well, even a team like Team USA in the past, they've incurred their fair share of losses. What they did, they retooled, they looked into their roster, they said, okay, the world is catching up. And in our area of the world, Southeast Asia, Indonesia has caught up. And it's only a matter of time before the rest of these countries start to catch up. Where they say, we're tired of being embarrassed. Let's get some players, let's get some guys, let's look to compete. All right? We need to put out better talent on the floor, the talent that actually deserves to rep the national flag. We need to have a better system, one deserving of world-class standard. That's what we need to do. Enough of this weird political play between players and coaches and owners. It's showed again. When you put politics over victories, and when you put certain pride over the goal, which is to win a gold, it showed. We collapsed against Indonesia. We didn't really put on a great showing against Indonesia. How do we expect, if you feel that same lineup, we're gonna get absolutely decimated by the likes of Iran, China, let alone these European teams that are thrice our size. In the FIBA Worlds, we got decimated in that tournament. I can't even imagine what it would look like. But here again, we gotta put out the best players that we have. We have a lot of great players. Then we gotta input the right system. Then we gotta get these guys through the fire. Get them playing against the best competition possible. We do that, I guarantee you, we're gonna be in great shape. Okay? So, Filipino fans, don't hang your head too low. Don't keep looking down, look up. Because the future of Philippine basketball is still super bright. The only question is, what are we gonna do about it, and when are we gonna start really putting things in place to make sure that we keep going the right direction? Again, this has been Japheth Kinyanola for NBA Front Row. I'll see you next time.